Jackson, and many of us have been involved with Manaaki for a long time. Some of our forebears in this process know Ron, Heather Winnie, and Moira. Leslynne has been constant through this whole process, from the social sector trials through to now. I often think that Leslynne should have an academic role in terms of the depth of her knowledge of what it is that we're all attempting to do. And I think for a place like us, we're full of doers, we're full of people who are in the trenches working with whānau, and the value of someone like Leslynne is the pullback to think, what is it that we're doing? Is it right? Is it wrong? What is really happening? And this is your opportunity to tell us.
It's a bit of a hard gig, this last session before lunch, but but it's entirely the right place for me to be in. Okay. Ko te rangi te maunga ko Waipawa te awa ko Ngāti Parau te aitanga mahaki te iwi ko Leslynne Jackson taku ingoa. I've been a bit ambitious today. I'm going to speak and click at the same time. So, I found this quote: "When old systems falter, instability creates both danger and opportunity. The unravelling we see today is the natural consequence of systems that have exploited, dehumanised and reduced life to profit. Yet within this unravelling lies an often forgotten power, the human capacity for connection, courage and transformation." I think those three words sum up my colleagues and my mates that I work with in Manaaki Tairāwhiti. Whoops, hey, I've skipped ahead. Okay, in the time that I've been working for Manaaki Tairāwhiti, and you're right Judy, it's been quite a long time, I've had the privilege of working with the most amazing team ever, and I'd like to introduce them to you. Actually, if I was a bit braver, I would have made them come and sit up here, but yeah, there could be consequences. So could I introduce you to Lane Hyam, Lavi Potu, Alufa Ionoa and Debs Hancock, but I will make you stand up. Come on, guys. Together, we've built on the learning of the first phase of the systems improvement undertaken in Manaaki Tairāwhiti. We've developed and tested a prototype for a more effective social services delivery in our community based on those early lessons from our coaches and into systems improvement. We are prototyping a social service system that's built around whānau from the ground up. We start by hearing what whānau are asking for help with and delivering only value work to support them to achieve their goals and aspirations. We're testing a system that understands what matters to whānau and respects and trusts their rights and their preferences. A system that is empowered with a network of practitioners who we call navigators or kaiuringi, who are well supported and empowered to deliver only what's needed and not contribute to waste. Not wasting people's time asking them questions that raise their hopes and expectations and then only lead them to a dead end. A system without the need for frustrating assessments, criteria or targets to sift and filter those who do and those who do not receive support. A system that does whatever it takes. A system that is agile and moves and changes as the needs of whānau change over time, a flexible system. A system that can report on the experiences of whānau every day in real time as they interact with the various parts of the system, through the government agencies, health services, schools and community organisations. We've designed purpose-built tech platform called Uringi, which is now being used to deliver insights directly from whānau who are seeking support about how well the system supports them, and most importantly, where the system has created barriers that refuse and deny whānau the help that they seek. Whānau voice, evidence and insights is critical in our mahi because we believe whānau deserve better. By doing social services better is not enough. We must change the system that delivers social services, and that's a fundamentally more challenging mountain to climb. To achieve this lofty goal, we need to be impervious to the winds of change driven by political cycles. And mission critical is the buy-in from leadership all the way to the top. On the subject of leadership, I wish to acknowledge the iwi leadership that has held space for us at Manaaki Tairāwhiti. And I particularly want to mention Ronald Nepi, our Manaaki Board Chair and Chief Executive of Tūrangaranga o Tūranganui-a-Kiwa. And all the Manaaki Governance Group. Some of you are here today, and I thank you all, past and present. You've been critical enablers of our work. Also to Puna Aonui, who funded the work of the Manaaki Navigators and the Ministry of Social Development. But most of all, my thanks and my acknowledgement goes to the amazing group of kaiuringi and navigators that we work with and have the pleasure to support. Today I will talk about what we've done so far, but what we aim to do next. So what did we learn from the first phase of systems improvement? No, I called it a cult, it is. I'm going to be the backup singer and I'm going to... No, you know someone that called us a cult. I'm going to sing the same song as Moira and the rest of our team that you heard this morning. We had the opportunity to observe parts of the system, work and income, oranga tamariki, corrections, whangaia ngā paharakeke, te paharakeke and health services. We learned how to listen for needs or the demands that whānau are placing on each of those systems and observe and document how the agencies responded to those needs expressed by whānau. We practiced listening to whānau voice verbatim without interpreting what was being said and without judgment. We documented what mattered to whānau, and you saw the same slide this morning. So, reinforcing the same thing. This is the key. In addition to understanding better what matters to whānau, we learned how to identify systemic barriers that slow down or stop whānau from accessing the support that they need. Barriers like access or communication or criteria. So then it came time to put that theory into action. So here I was working with the rest of the team, with Moira and Nomai, and people like Greg Brown, and we were learning this system stuff, and we were, trying to get our heads around it. But I had been given another task by the Manaaki board, and that was to start working with some navigators. So I put that theory into action. Manaaki Tairāwhiti already had a proposal in with central government seeking funding to create 2 navigator positions. Now I can tell you, currently we have 14 of those navigators working with us in partnership. Initially, our proposal focused on recommendations of the Productivity Commission's 2015 report, More Effective Social Services. Particularly the diagram that they published that described social service user types. So this is where our understanding was at in 2015. The Productivity Commission, after an extensive 400-page report, told us that the problem was whānau who have complex needs and low capacity to understand and navigate agency systems. And that all that those whānau would need, these people that fit into a category called Quadrant D, all they would need is a navigator to walk alongside them, and then we would have equity of outcomes. We were hard focused on addressing the needs of people in Quadrant D. We thought we're going to get a couple of navigators and they'll do whatever it takes, and our board will lean in and we'll solve all the problems, one family at a time, 50 families over. That's why our early prototype was called 50 Families. Then we thought we'd know everything about where all the barriers are. But after the systems improvement training, we figured out that would be another attempt at doing the wrong thing righter. What we needed to do was something entirely different. So by 2019, armed with this new knowledge of how the system itself creates, maintains, replicates and amplifies ever-changing layers of complexity that even our most experienced practitioners, let alone whānau, have any hope of understanding or navigating, we changed direction. We thought, let's focus on the system itself. I had the lucky opportunity to go back to the Productivity Commission and say, hey, you know that diagram you did? It was great. Here's one that we made. This one actually talks to the complexity of systems and the coverage. I talk often about, if you had to ring 111 because you got home and your house was on fire, that system it has great coverage. Any person in the whole country can ring and get that kind of help. And the system complexity, simple. 5-year-olds know how to pick up the phone and call 111. But what about a system to give support to a woman who's been separated from her child when she's imprisoned? You've got to go through those justice systems you heard about this morning. Police, courts, corrections, prisons. Those systems live over here. Needs of people who are in those systems go unmet because those systems are impossible to navigate. And they're for a very small number of people, very targeted group. Making change in those systems nigh on impossible. So we thought, let's evidence the effectiveness of these systems rather than the navigators. And we would no longer hold the illusion that navigators could change the system. Because navigators can't fix systems. They can't get you a house if there's none available. They can't get you an appointment with a specialist any faster than anyone else can. And they can't increase your benefit entitlement. I mean, they're pretty good, but they're not that good. They're not magic. Navigators can't change the complexity of systems or increase their coverage. Navigators are a workaround for broken systems. But if they are part of a workforce, and we empower that workforce with the power to make decisions, to work flexibly, and we invest in their capability through coaching and by providing them with practice support, navigators can document what works and doesn't work and what needs to change. I described them, well, it was described to me. Our navigators are the water we pour through the system to see where the holes are. There's lots of holes. Some early lessons. It's really easy to interpret whānau voice. I can't get my daughter to the hospital appointment. Suddenly gets easily translated into, oh, you need a driver's license. There's a program for that, I'll make a referral. But what was creating the need? What's the root cause? And that's what we're really seeking to uncover, to get to the root cause of needs that go unmet by the system. What are the causes of why people cycle through agency systems time and time again, but never able to break free of cycles of deprivation, hardship and despair? Because this is what tells us where investment could make the biggest difference. And yes, along our journey, we've heard lots of people say to us, oh yeah, we're already doing that. Another early lesson is not everyone can do this. Some want to retain the illusion of control, where the contract boundaries keep them feeling safe and helps them to avoid any sense of risk. But risk aversion and the illusion of control has gotten way out of control. Is it right that whānau are turned away or made to wait till they're in crisis before they get help? Nope. So the navigators are testing the way of working live in the community, and you've heard about how that was developed and how in other spaces, in ka awatea and other spaces, this is also being tested. So Manaaki Tairāwhiti delivers interconnected approaches. You've heard from Judy and Moira and other members of our team that collectively Manaaki Tairāwhiti involves interconnected approaches that are acting on the system, acting in the system, and evidencing the impact of changes to the system. In this way, we're bringing together action and evidence. And we've created a learning system rich with information that flows freely between whānau, those who they trust to support them, and into the system that has the power to create or destroy the conditions for success. This Tairāwhiti way of working is about putting the theory into practice in the field, and the kaiuringi use this set of practical steps interchangeably as it suits the circumstances of whānau. And in this way of working, they seek permission and consent. They bring together the people that whānau have selected that have a role in helping them all to collectively understand the situation, and it requires each of the practitioners to collectively respond and maintain good communication and do what needs to be done. And any practitioner at any stage can pull for support from other agencies and organisations at any level of the hierarchy to meet the needs of whānau. When whānau are ready, they can discharge practitioners as they've achieved their own well-being. Well, I can tell you that testing this way of working has not been simple. There have been quite a few sort of maybe quite awkward conversations, but we've persevered. But it sounds simple, but trust me, it's not. What we've evidenced is that when the going gets tough and multiple agencies are involved, the more entrenched the behaviour of, that's not my job, the more that comes out. But that behaviour doesn't come from nowhere. It's encoded in the funding and contracting of social services. It's framed by the targets, the criteria and the contract specifications of each and every social service in the network. It's driven by the siloed nature of government agencies. And the unintended consequence of this type of targeting is the denial of service. Denial of service is a structural system condition that holds whānau back, especially when they're asking for help preventatively and early. So it's 2 steps forward and then 3 steps backwards. So I'm really here to tell you about the uringi data. The navigators capture data from whānau with their consent, none of their identifying information, only their observations of how the system has treated them and what their experience in the system is. And in order to make the unintended consequence of system barriers visible, we have to make the invisible visible. We have to name it, quantify it, and measure it, because you can't manage it if you can't measure it. And you certainly can't hold anyone accountable for it. So here we go. Measures. It's all about the measures. They tell you if you've achieved your purpose, and our purpose is to hold the mirror up to the system, to show the way that the system helps, and in some cases harms, the whānau who are asking for help. And I'm always grateful that whānau give consent for this information to be shared. The measures that we ask that are shared are need. What did whānau say they needed help with, while maintaining the integrity of their voice? What was the type of need? We classify whether the need is something that whānau want or whether it's a system requirement that must be met in order to access support or a service. Who could act on this? What part of the system can or should be acting on this need? The navigator response. How did the navigator who's supporting the whānau respond? Who did they contact? What did they do? Did they provide the service themselves? And barriers. What were the systemic barriers that they encountered as they were supporting whānau to meet the need? And time taken to meet the need. What was the end-to-end time for need to be met? And I can tell you, inside of Uringi, there are examples of needs that have not been met in the life of the work that we've been doing. Our navigators are supported by their fabulous coaches and the network of other navigators who work together to support each other in each other's continuous learning and their ability to feed new information into Uringi by sharing what they've seen, heard and experienced while working alongside whānau. And then our analyst, Debs Hancock. Hi, Debs. She works with the coaches and produces reports that tell the data stories that whānau have entrusted with us. The data is anonymous, non-identifying, but even so, we take the greatest care in how we present data, which is why you won't find it published anywhere. But its purpose is really to help leaders understand the performance of their systems and what the unintended consequences are and impacts on whānau. So I'm going to share with you a few of the types of reports that we generate. Of course, you can come and see us if you want to take a closer look at these reports. I know it's really hard to see stuff up there on a screen, and I'm not expecting that you'll be able to read these, so I'll explain them. This is an Uringi quarterly dashboard. This is now generated to give the Manaaki Tairāwhiti board an overview of how parts of the system are performing from the perspective of whānau, who are live and using these systems right now. This story tells us that in the 3 months from July to September this year, 176 whānau sought help from the 14 navigators who are located in 10 amazing iwi and NGO organisations in this community. Of those whānau, 454 needs were identified, and in trying to solve those needs, they encountered 493 system barriers. The barrier rate is the average number of barriers per need for each system. So for example, in this picture, we can see that the barrier rate for health was 1.3 and the barrier rate for housing is 1.1. So you're going to meet more barriers than you are solutions to the needs that you have. But it's not just health and housing that we're kind of singling out. We see that across the board. In those quarterly reports, we then dive into each of those subsystems, systems and their subsystems, to look closer at the information. This example, this describes need themes, such as the need for an appointment, or for someone to attend the appointment with me, and barrier themes like communication, availability, delay, or affordability. So yeah, this is the kind of information we generate for our board. We hope that it helps them to reflect on, we're making all of these changes, we've got a new strategy, we've hired these new people, we're doing this new thing. Is it making a difference from the perspective of whānau, and can you see it as this data changes every quarter? This is an example of a report that we are preparing on education to support the Regional Public Service Group who are working to improve education outcomes. Hi, Sarah. We're grateful to be able to provide this information. And this whānau voice information really does complement agency administrative data, but it adds context to and it helps the group of leaders plan their interventions. The barrier information points to them why students and whānau are saying those students aren't attending. One of our awesome NGOs that we work with, Super Grands, you'll hear from them this afternoon, they said, we've got the Prime Minister coming to visit. Can we have some uringi data that tells us about kai and groceries? Because we're a food bank and people ask us for kai. And this shows that in the time that navigators have been capturing whānau voice, there has been a consistent increase in the number of whānau requesting kai. We can also see the number of barriers such as can't afford it, worried about costs, or I don't have any, or I don't have enough. We can look into any system using the data that we have and produce reporting to help leaders understand challenges such as transport, housing, or anything else. So our board are fortunate that they can come to us and get this information. We can also produce in-depth reports, like the reports we've written on education or rangatahi, youth voice, but they run to 20, 30 or 40 pages, so you're not going to see them on a PowerPoint presentation. We believe that these are examples of how to create value from the voices of whānau that help leaders make whānau-centred decisions. These reports show the coverage of social services and how much our services are actually doing and how much they don't do, and how many whānau are left waiting. We believe that whānau want systems to change for the better, and we believe that quality insights directly from whānau is a powerful tool for system transformation. That's pretty much what drives our team. System change. People are changing the system all the time, every day. Politicians, chief executives, policy writers, contract specialists. A new something is ruled out on a regular basis. But how do these ideas get created? Design thinking is popular these days, as is co-design or community-led design. Our prototype is whānau-centred design, iwi-led and community-delivered. And as far as I know, we are the only workforce capturing system performance data. Lock your ears, navigators. We don't want more navigators. We love the ones we've got, but we don't want more. We want the system that contracts social services to integrate our way of working and our measures into the mainstream model of contracting. With the right support, all community providers can do what we are doing. They can do more of what works for whānau, they can work more flexibly, and they can create richer, more meaningful reporting. In the future, if system changes were based on the kind of whānau voice evidence we are generating, change would be led by whānau-informed leaders. Leaders with a whole new level of detail about the context of people's lives, not just the number of people that attended a program. Context about what they needed and why and what their because is. It would be a clear indication of why they can't do it themselves or even with the support of a clever and well-supported navigator. By continuing to monitor and evidence and report on system performance, we give leaders the evidence they need to prove that their decisions are hitting the mark, delivering what whānau actually need and not what well-meaning intentions assume that they need. That would be a great day. Just going to talk a little bit about social investment. I've read at its core, social investment involves an approach to social policy that places emphasis on using data and evidence to make decisions about where resources should be directed. It requires an understanding of the root causes of social issues such as poverty, unemployment, or family violence, and investing in programs and interventions that deliver long-term benefits. An alternative to short-term fixes to improve life outcomes and reduce social inequalities, and to achieve a more equitable society. This would be achieved through a combination of early intervention and prevention and the use of data to track and measure success. If this definition of social investment is correct, then I would say what we've spent the last 7 years learning, developing, testing, and evidence is that we have an approach that uses data and evidence to make decisions, that strengthens local leadership and builds capability for making decisions about where resources should be directed. We've built an evidence base about the root causes of poverty, unemployment, and hardship. We've tested a prototype of a system within the mainstream system that lights the way for future systemic change that could reduce social inequality and lead to a more equitable society. We've tested contracts with no targets, no criteria, to encourage flexibility and to support whānau when they need help preventatively and early. I would say Manaaki Tairāwhiti is a great social investment. The return on this investment into Manaaki Tairāwhiti is the evidence that creates leaders who are ready to lead, change makers who know evidentially what change will make the biggest difference in the lives of whānau, and we think that has value for everyone, whānau and the system. Next steps. So the next phase of as our development evolves, we plan to build Uringi 2.0 and upgrade our tech platform and incorporate all of the things that we've learned from our original prototype about linking data for better reporting. Actually, our reports are pretty good, but we still think we can do more. Uringi 2.0 will have the capacity to take data from new sources, practitioners working in other parts of the workforce outside of the Navigator cohort that we currently fund. In time, performance measures could be included in all social service reporting. We'll take our coaching and practice supervision to the world, or at least wider into our own community, giving more practitioners access to the coaching on understanding system performance and the Tairāwhiti way of working. We will maintain our small but perfectly formed backbone function for Manaaki Tairāwhiti. Yes, it is lean. You can tell that I wasn't the one that approved the budget for the kai. It's pretty good catering. We'll continue to support the work of our Manaaki colleagues, Judy's team working on strategy, housing and social recovery, and Moira's team leading systems improvement. So for those of you in the room who are stakeholders from government, what do we need from you? We ask you, can you change government contracts, your MSD contracts, your OT contracts, to expand the Tairāwhiti way of working and the capturing of whānau voice measures? Can you devolve greater decision making to local service contracts to Manaaki Tairāwhiti? Ultimately to iwi, that's where the devolution conversation's going. You'll hear more about that later. Manaaki sees itself as something of a transition office and a step along the way. Go on then and give us a little bit of money and invest in Uringi 2.0. We had to work so hard to get that money. We had to go and do a competition, put a pitch in Parliament, and win an innovation prize from Westpac to get us going. And increase the use of whānau voice evidence in decision making. All of our decisions should be based on what's best for whānau and what they're telling us. In conclusion, in the social sector, we can do better. Whānau are relying on us to do so, and their challenges must be our challenges. We have a duty to care about the man-made systems we've built, because it's not whānau who are hard to reach. It's the support they need that's locked up deep within the complex systems we've built. We must question and challenge why concepts such as scarcity and acting in our own best interest have pervaded our duty and obligation to care for one another, to connect with one another. Because there is enough. There's enough time, enough care, enough aroha, and enough manaakitanga for us all. The philosopher Noam Chomsky said, "I think it only makes sense to seek out and identify structures of authority, hierarchy, and domination in every aspect of life, and to challenge them. Unless a justification for them can be given, they are illegitimate and should be dismantled to increase the scope of human freedom." At Manaaki Tairāwhiti, we now know better, and we ask for the opportunity to do better, to transform systems. It's not just about resilience, it's about resistance and justice, because we don't accept the inevitability of a cruel world. I ask you to think courageously about devolution to community and trust in iwi leadership and the skills and knowledge that we've built to push the boundaries so we can all do more of whatever it takes for our whānau. Thank you.